I'm making this video for those of you who are considering using a quantitative methodology in their dissertation. With my personal experience here in the last 20 years or so, I have worked with well over 1,000 of these. So I'm gonna include the basics that I go over with each and every one of the students that have asked me for help. Okay, so again, we're just gonna go over the basics. And we always start with, what are you looking for? Those are what we call your objectives. So your objectives in quantitative methodology basically break down into one of two things, okay? You're gonna, statistically speaking, you're gonna look for, are there differences between groups? So if you've got a grouping variable, something like marital status, ethnicity, gender, are there significant differences between those groups, also called levels, in a DV? So like depression, anxiety, annual income, job satisfaction, something like that. So that's your first objective. Your second objective might be, are there relationships between two variables? In other words, the longer a person does therapy, does that in fact decrease their anxiety or depression? Or the longer a person has worked at a company, does that increase their job satisfaction? Things like that. So those are objectives. Now your research questions, they could be kind of, I guess nebulous would be a good word, right? They don't have to be exact or clear or precise. You could say things like, you know, how does the marital status affect a person's anxiety score? Something like that, where it's not real exactly statistically clear on what you're going to do. But then when you get to your hypotheses, this is my advice. Make them as statistically sound as possible. Use the words like, there will be a significant difference between this group and that group and that group in terms of whatever it is you're trying to measure, anxiety, depression, job satisfaction, etc., etc. Or the relationship side, there will be a significant positive relationship between hours of therapy and levels of anxiety, something like that. Important enough to say twice. So your hypotheses, when you write them, pretend that your statistics professor is going to read them, and there'll be absolutely no doubt in that person's mind of which statistical analysis you're going to run. And what will you be measuring? Exactly what will you be measuring? There's a lot of different measurements out there. And whenever you start measuring anything from a participant, that's what we statisticians call variables. And there's a ton of different descriptive types of variables, right? So there's independent variables, there's dependent variables, there's covariates, there are lurking variables, response variables, etc., etc. There's a lot of different variables. So we're going to break this down into the types of variables. There's three types of variables that we use in statistics. I know you know this, you've heard it a million times, but the first type are nominal or categorical, puts people in groups. Ethnicity, gender, marital status, car color, you know, who's your favorite actor, that kind of thing. That puts people in groups. That's called nominal variables. Number two is your continuous variables. Those are what I refer to as just regular numbers. It's just a chunk of the number line. In other words, how much a person weighs, what their depression scores are. Anything that's just a chunk of the number line, and it can have fractions and decimals, and a zero means zero. There's nothing there, okay? That's a continuous. There is a fourth variable called interval. I'm not even going to go there. Don't use them, okay? And interval, the only thing that I've ever seen is the temperature is an interval variable. Don't use it because zero does not mean zero, and I'm sorry it took so long to explain it. Okay, the third type of variable is an ordinal variable, and that is a Likert scale, right? 1 to 5, 1 to 7. 1, I strongly disagree. 7, I strongly agree. Or a level. If you see the word level in whatever you're measuring, that makes it ordinal. A good one is level of education, or their rank in the military, right? So it's just the higher the number, the stronger the characteristic. But ordinal has no fractions and no decimals. So those are the big three right there. So if you know the types of variables that you will be using, nominal, continuous, or ordinal, and if you add that to your hypotheses, then you're going to know exactly which test you're going to use. This is a major problem for a lot of students, is they're not sure which statistical analysis to use with their data and their hypotheses. But again, if you know the types of variables and you add in what you're looking for, that tells you exactly which test to use. There's no question about it. And then once you figure that out, once you know which type of statistical test you're going to use, your next step is to run a power analysis, right? An a priori power analysis, and to get a minimum sample size for your stats test. You need to find out what a minimum sample size is we're going to use the GPower software program, but there are other ways to do this. Don't just pick a number out of your ear, because that will not fly, right? You'll never get it past IRB. So again, we use GPower. I have a couple videos on that. I can help you with that. It's free. It's pre-programmed, but it's not exactly easy to use. But again, just email me and I'll walk you through this. It only takes a minute, okay? But this will give you your minimum sample size based on whatever your test is. So another big question is, how exactly will you be measuring your data? Most of you guys are going to be using surveys. In fact, practically all you guys will. Some of you guys will have old data, and that's fine. That's archival data, that's fine. But 99% of you guys are going to use surveys. So if you go the survey route, make darn sure that you use the Qualtrics through Alliant. Alliant gives you a free Qualtrics account. Qualtrics, again, is not the easiest thing to use, but I got a bunch of videos on how to do it. Plus, again, I can help you set up your survey in Qualtrics. The hard part is to make the kick-out questions. If the participants don't qualify, you got to kick them out. So, but I will show you. I have a video on that somewhere. So, moving right along. After you've done your survey, you're going to download your data. You have options. You could download it as an Excel or as an SPSS document. I suggest you do both, because you got to clean your data. Some people that take the survey do not finish, right? So the rule of thumb is, if they don't finish at least half of it, don't use them at all, unless you're really, really hurting for numbers, and that happens sometimes. I always like to clean mine in Excel first, but sometimes it's easier in SPSS. Just whatever floats your boat there. And then once you clean your data, you run your statistical analyses. You interpret the SPSS output. In other words, what were the results of your tests? Then you write them up in APA formatting, and that's basically it, right? You're done. Easy cheesy, or is it easy peasy? That's about it. I have one other addendum here. Some people decide to go with the quantitative method instead of the qualitative method because they mistakenly believe that a quantitative study is easier than a qualitative study, and that is not always true, okay? A quantitative study can be done in a timely fashion as long as you plan it out well, your variables are clearly defined, and your data has been cleaned. So I hope this helps. MGZ out.